Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Ursula. I'm an indie author of historical fiction and I'm also an avid reader. I've been reading since I was 3 years old, and I'm sorry I'm still getting used to being in front of the camera talking by myself, but hopefully my nerves are getting much better now. First, I would like to speak about a wonderful book that's been in my life for over 25 years now, written in ancient China, as I mentioned in my last vlog. First, I'd like to show what I bought at a recent trip to the used bookstore a few hours before Yom Kippur began. Very excited about reading this one, and I also bought another 2 books in 1 by Mr. Singer. I last and first read him over 20 years ago. I believe that was his final book, published posthumously, called Shadows on the Hudson, which is excellent. I would highly recommend that book, and I'm also for reasons I'll explain in a future vlog, very interested in reading more Yiddish writers, and I was so thrilled to find this. I read this, I think, in 2004 in a mass market paperback sized book, and you can see the original owner put her name in it all. Unfortunately, she used that. I really hate this Mrs. Husband's full name thing. It's not nails on a chalkboard to me, but unfortunately that's just how things were in those days, so you can't really argue too much with it. And as I said, I read it when I was 24 years old, but unfortunately as I've gotten older, my eyes are getting a little worse. It's really hard to read in mass market paperback sized books now, so I'm really looking forward to rereading this book in a much better trim size. And this is what I'm currently reading. I got it a few months ago, but didn't get around to it yet. So the book I'm going to be talking about today is the Tao Te Ching. So you can see this. I got this from my parents' shelf in January 1996. I know there are many other translations, and each fill a different need. For example, you want more academic or more literal to the letter, more just philosophical, all sorts of different things. And one of the reasons I love this, it has these beautiful black and white pictures on it, and it has Chinese calligraphy. Just every page is so beautiful. There are some bookmarks I've put in it throughout the years from different things. I highly recommend this translation, even though there are many other translations to choose from. This is going to be the definitive and the only one for me throughout my entire life, although I wouldn't be opposed to reading other translations. This is just emotionally meaningful to me. Now, I've been interested in Eastern religions since 9th grade. I had a global studies class, which was history class, and we studied about the Indian subcontinent first. We learned about the religions of India in the East in that class. For example, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, Zoroastrianism, Islam, Judaism, a bit about Christianity. We didn't really learn much about the Far East religions, Shintoism, Taoism, and Confucianism, or didn't really learn much about animism in Africa, so I was very interested in learning more. Sorry, there's an ink stain on my hand. I was refilling my fountain pen last night. This is actually, it looks like my left hand, but it's actually my right hand. The camera reverses things. I'm predominantly left-handed, although I do most of my personal writing with my right hand. I do my art with my left hand, and I can do a future vlog about my ambidexterity and which hand I prefer for what. So anyway, I found the Tao Te Ching on my parents' shelves in January 96, which was probably less than a month, maybe a month after I turned 16. My 16th birthday was December 1995. Believe it or not, I'm 41 years old. I was fascinated by just looking at it, and I got permission to take it over the years. I asked if my parents could I take some books from their shelves that interested me. Like, for example, that's how I fell in love with Chekhov and Turgenev, and they said, take it where you haven't read this in decades. They have all these old books because they were English majors. They also have master's degrees in English, so I was raised with the love of literature. Unfortunately, my little brother didn't pick up on that love of literature at all. And one of the reasons I was interested in it, besides learning about Chinese religion, was because at the time I started each journal entry with a quote. And now, I've written about on my blog a little bit. You can't really, a lot of quotes, I mean, they're well-meaning and they're nice, but a lot of people just take them out of context. Like, if you knew the lines before and after, the quote would seem radically different. But anyway, I didn't really understand that yet. I was just a teenager, and I love the simple beautiful ancient wisdom in this book. That's one other reason why it's my definitive translation for me, because it's just, the language is so beautiful and simple. It's not like bogged down and overly complicated and dense and academic. Like, for example, the famous first line in here, they render it, "The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao." And then it continues, "The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The nameless is the beginning of heaven and earth. The named is the mother of 10,000 things. Ever desireless, one can see the mystery. Ever desiring, one can see the manifestations. These two spring from the same source, but differ in name. This appears as darkness. Darkness within darkness, the gate to all mystery." But unfortunately, this, I don't know if this is the case for all versions of this translation, or my parents just got a bad one. Now, chapters 66 and 67 are untranslated. They're just written in the ancient Chinese and pictures. And finally, I found the translation that corresponded to this in my senior year of university, so 2001, 2002, and I printed them off on the communal printer. I lived in the Hillel house that year, and I stuck them into the proper pages where they belong, although obviously they weren't the same typeface. It looks like it was Helvetica or Arial or maybe Verdana. And you might say, why didn't I just write them in those pages? Because there was plenty of room, and I can have neat handwriting. But I personally have never shaken the training I had when I was younger. Don't write in books, except for filling in someone's death year, maybe occasionally writing my name and the date in the beginning. And I know people like mark up books all the time when they're reading for like textbooks or just their own personal training, but I just personally can't shake it. You're not supposed to write in books. I don't know if I'll ever be able to do that comfortably, because it's just, my early training. The book is so personal to me. It's one of the few books I've ever hugged, and because it's that emotional, and I might have even slept with it under my pillow at some time. And this has a beautiful old book smell. It really takes me back. And one reason it's emotional for me is because it was one of the few things I had with me during my junior year of high school. To make a long story short, my parents moved back to Pennsylvania, and it was obvious from the jump this was a horrible mistake of a move. Like, we didn't even get to live in Pittsburgh like we'd been planning. We ended up living with my paternal grandparents in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. All our things were in boxes in my other grandparents' house while they were in Florida for the winter. And this book was one of the few things I had with me, along with my journal and my clothes and maybe some jewelry. And the reason I had it with me was because it was in my backpack. As I said, I was using it for quotes for my journal entries, and ever since then, I've had this beautiful, strong bond with it. It's like, forged in fire, a love that you can have for a few other books. And I also love the Jewish parallels I find in it, like when Lao Tzu describes the indescribable, infinite nature of the Tao. That's very similar to Jewish depictions of God. And as you'll see further on, chapter 31 has been especially important to me. I'm a pacifist, although I'm personally not anti-military, and I do believe some wars are morally justified, but I personally am a pacifist. That's just my own personal belief. And chapter 31, I have quoted that in so many books of mine, and also just thought of often. I did use that quote to, well, at least not the entire chapter, but like pertinent parts of it to open the first book I published. But because this particular translation is still in copyright, I had to mix and match it a bit with an older public domain translation. And it's basically talking about war must be conducted like a funeral. If you rejoice in victory, you delight in killing. If you delight in killing, you cannot fulfill yourself. When many people are being killed, they should be mourned in heartfelt sorrow. This is why a victory must be observed like a funeral. There's also another quote in here: the strength of the spirit prevents its being used up. I thought of that often during my awful junior year of high school, which was an awful, stressful, nightmarish year for everyone. And Baruch Hashem, thank God, it finally came to an end, and we were able to move to Massachusetts and put that nightmare chapter behind us. And there's also another wonderful chapter in here about, a small country can win over a big country or enemy if it just submits to that country. The little guy, the dark horse, can often win the battle even though no one expects it to. And as aforementioned, I used it. The Tao Te Ching appears frequently in my first published book, and Jakob Flew the Fiend Away. Jacob he styles himself as a bit of a modern-day Maccabee. He wants to take revenge on the thugs who coerced his father into suicide in October 1940, and he wants to join the military and escape. And his mother, Louisa, tells him, no, you need to calm down. Don't be so hopped up on revenge. A passionate man will either kill or be killed. And she finally gives him the Tao Te Ching with some things the night before they're going to be deported. He jumps off the death train, and he finds it later when he's taken to a safe house. That's one of the books she gave him, and it becomes very dear to him over the next few years. He always carries it with him in the partisans, and after he goes to join the official army in the Princess Irene Brigade, which was part of the Dutch Free Forces and later became part of the Royal Army of the Netherlands after the war. And he reads from the Tao Te Ching and the Bhagavad Gita while he's on his way to become an official soldier in early 1945. Chapter 2 of this book is also one of the quotes I used to open part 3 of my book, A Little Ragdoll, a Bildungsroman, which that part 3 is called The Conjoined Twins of Agony and Ecstasy, and that's related to an idea from Hermann Hesse's Narcissus and Goldman. I can probably do a future vlog about that. Hermann Hesse, by the way, is my second favorite writer. He's been very meaningful and influential to me, all of his books and his writings, and particularly because he also was very interested in Eastern wisdom, so I kind of relate to him a lot, and I would love to meet him in the afterlife and just hang out with him. This is chapter 2. Under heaven, all can see beauty is beauty only because there is ugliness. All can know good is good only because there is evil. Therefore, having and not having arise together. Difficult and easy complement each other. Long and short contrast each other. High and low rest upon each other. Front and sound harmonize each other. Front and back follow one another. Therefore the sage goes about doing nothing, teaching no talking. The 10,000 things rise and fall without cease, creating, yet not possessing, working, yet not taking credit. Work is done, then forgotten, therefore it lasts forever. Well, I don't believe I used the entire chapter 2, but I did use the pertinent things about how you can only know one thing if you've experienced it opposite, because otherwise how would you know what's really going on? And there's another wonderful, in my first alternative, I'm writing a second alternative history about Dante and Beatrice, as I mentioned in a previous vlog, but I also have another alternative history which I published in 2018. It's called And Alexei Lived, about Tsar Alexei II, the hemophiliac son of Nicholas II, how he was rescued and became the greatest Tsar in history. And I used lines from chapter 43 as one of the opening quotes of the book. Sometimes the softest thing in the universe can overcome the hardest thing in the universe. And Alexei does quote chapter 31 in the book as well. So that's... And in my one of my books I'm working on, it's been on hiatus for a while, it's called The Strongest Branches of Uprooted Trees. My character Imre also loves the Tao Te Ching. It's one of the things he takes with him when he goes to move to join his friends on the Buddha side of Budapest. And in my book, Journey Through a Dark Forest, my character Katrine, who's one of my favorite characters in these books, she quotes chapter 31 at the end of an editorial she writes denouncing the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And if you're interested in my views on why I personally don't believe we should have bombed those cities, you can read her op-ed in the book. It basically matches all my own feelings, but I'm not going to discuss that here. My views on that are not up for discussion. And in my book, How Kachin Became Sparky, which I emotionally still think of as the very first Mrs. Small quotes, chapter 67. I don't believe she actually credits it to Lao Tzu or the Tao Te Ching, but she says the most successful people are flexible, and the people who are hard and rigid, they just don't get along very well. And this book is so special to me. It's going to be one of the things that goes in my carry-on suitcase with me when I make Aliyah, move to Israel. Baruch Hashem, God willing, will be next summer, along with books like The Divine Comedy and the Decameron, and of course all my Jewish religious books, which I'll introduce in a future vlog, because, I just have never been physically separated from this book ever since it came into my life when I was 16 years old. It's just a beautiful bond I've enjoyed with this book all these many years, and I really highly recommend you read this book. there are so many wonderful translations out there, but I highly recommend this one. I won't be offended if you choose another translation. So I'll see you next week, hopefully. Bye.